know you've been wondering this, how to raise successful kids without over-parenting. This video will give you a powerful model to be a successful parent without over-parenting. I'll share that model with you in some detail, and then I'll give you 3 powerful messages that you can send your kids. And why should you listen to me? I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins. I'm a professional psychologist. My entire career of almost 30 years now has been based on helping parents like you to do a better job raising their kids. And that's where we really change the world. I've worked with hundreds, probably thousands of kids and their parents. And I've learned some things that are so powerful. Let's start with a model. The model that I'll be sharing with you has a visual component that I would love to have you own. So I'm giving you a complimentary copy of this model. Go to drpauljenkins.com/stages, and I'll tell you what that means here in just a minute. This will connect you to a form where you can get a free PDF copy of the model that we're going to be referring to in this video. So go grab it. The whole secret to successful parenting lies in understanding the interplay between control and maturity. This is what you'll see on the model that I promised you. Let's start with control. Control means control over your own life, or your kids' control over their own life, and to another extent, the control that you have over your kids' life. Look at the graph that I've shared with you, and you'll see over there on the left-hand side, I've put control. It goes from 0 at the bottom to 100% at the top. So you can have all the control, or none of the control, or somewhere in between. And usually it's somewhere in between, right? Now let's look at the bottom line down there is labeled maturity. Maturity means how grown up you are. The way we usually think about maturity is age. So at birth, how much control do you have over your own life? Yeah, not very much, right? You can make a big noise, you can make a big stink, that's about it. You don't have much control. That means somebody else has to take that control because little babies are so helpless and vulnerable. Somebody else has to control almost everything about their life. Who is that? This is where you come in as a parent. Now, before we go any farther with the model, I have to share with you something I learned early in my career that has always guided my decisions about how we share control. There's a lineup for who gets to have the control. First in line is the self. Now this is true for you, it's also true for your kids. Every individual gets first crack at the control in their own life. Who's second in line? If it's not the self, it's got to be somebody else. You're right, it's the parents. That's where you come in, okay, as a parent. Because your kids, if they're not mature enough to have much control over their own life, they got to have somebody to step in. You're next in line as a parent. Who's third in line? Now, this is where I get answers like, well, maybe friends, I don't know, the school. Well, school is closer than friends. Friends have influence, but they don't have the power or the authority to take control over your kids. Who does? The state. I'll just pause for a minute to let that sink in, because I have been in the unfortunate position in the past where a kid was out of control. The parents were not able to take control appropriately, and I had to invite the state to come in and take control. The state has both the power and the authority, whether it's right or wrong. I'm not here to debate that. They have the power and the authority to take control over your kids if the other two aren't in place. Okay? Now that's important to know, because my preference, my strong preference, is to put kids in control of their own lives to the extent that they're able to do that based on their maturity. I'll come back to that in just a minute. In the case that we can't get kids to take appropriate control over their own life, I strongly prefer that parents step in and take that control, because I do not like the alternative. I don't want the state coming into my family. I don't want them coming into your family. So we're going to keep that control at home. Child first, parent second. Now, what about you as a parent? Yeah, you got to be in control of your stuff too. We need to get your stuff in a pile, because you're the ones who we're counting on to come in and take up as much control as you need to with your kids. So the model that I'm sharing with you is about sharing control. You'll see on the graph that the model starts low on that left-hand side, and then it increases as maturity increases, so does control. Meaning, the more mature you are, the more control you get to have. This makes total sense when you compare a 7-month-old to a 7-year-old to a 17-year-old, and how much control each of those have. You can see as you gain maturity, you get to gain control. Let's go back to maturity now for a minute, because maturity has something to do with age, but not everything. In fact, one of the mantras we use in our coaching programs is stage, not age. Stage, not age. What are we talking about? Let's divide that graph that you see on the model. And again, if you don't have the model, just go to drpauljenkins.com/stages and you'll get exactly what I'm sharing with you here. You get a PDF, you can print it out. This is what we refer to in all of our coaching programs. So I want you to have it. I'm giving it to you for free. You'll notice that we've divided that up into 3 stages. Do you see that visually? 3 stages. And stage 1 is the least mature. Stage 2 is right there in the middle. Stage 3 is the most mature. Just as a quick description of all of those stages, stage 1 is all about being selfish and self-centered. And check it out, a 2-year-old is really good at throwing tantrums. That's a stage 1 characteristic. 2-year-old is really good at being selfish and not considering the needs of mom or anyone else in the home when they want something. They just throw a little hissy fit and they demand what they want. I want what I want and I want it now. Now, we see that with 2-year-olds, but we see that with 17-year-olds too. In fact, I know 35-year-olds who sometimes get stuck over here in stage 1. But that's what it's characteristic of, okay? When you're on stage 1, you don't get to have much control over your own life. And it's about stage, not age. Who's going to take most of the control? The parent. Okay? Or in the case if you're too old to have parents around to take control, then the state steps in. I gave a keynote at the state prison last year. I know that the state is still capable of taking control over someone's life if they're not demonstrating an appropriate level of maturity. We won't get into that on this conversation, but remember, it's stage, not age. Okay, let's go to stage 2. Stage 2, we stop fighting. We put some of that rebellion aside that was characteristic of stage 1. We stop fighting and we start cooperating. In fact, cooperation is how we know that we've moved from stage 1 to stage 2. If your kids are cooperating with you, then we get to allow more control. Remember that the control increases as you become more mature. So at stage 2, they get to have more control. What happens to the parents? You back off. You take less control if your kids are on stage 2. Remember, stage, not age. So it's not about how old they are. It's about how mature they are. Kids at stage 2 are willing to cooperate. They'll communicate with you. They'll have a rational conversation. They don't want any trouble. They want to keep the peace. And so they're going to go along with reasonable requests. They're going to respect people with authority or power. That's all about stage 2. Now, what about stage 3? If cooperation is the dividing line between 1 and 2, I'd say initiative is the dividing line between 2 and 3. Initiative meaning you see what needs to be done and you do it. Nobody has to ask you or nag you to do it. You just see that it needs to be done. I still remember a 13-year-old girl in my office with her mom. They're having some conflicts. I was sharing the model with them. I teach this model to kids too. It's not a secret. Share it with your kids. In fact, there's another video here on the channel that will show you how I teach this to kids. It's called How to Convince Your Parents to Get a Dog. Go look it up. You'll see my goofy mug there, and you'll see how I teach this model to kids. Go check it out, okay? Don't keep this a secret from your kids. Share it with them. Especially if you want to avoid over-parenting. And I'll come right back to that in a minute after we finish with the model. So let's go over to stage 3, initiative. You see what needs to be done and you do it. This 13-year-old who was in my office and they're having some conflicts, I asked her this question. I said, how does mom know? And she's like, how does she know what? How does mom know that the dishes need to be done? How does she know this? She can see it. Oh, wow. Can you see it? Yes. See, I was calling her out on it. She can see that the dishes need to be done. What's missing? The initiative. Because when you see what needs to be done, do you have the maturity to step up and take care of that? Or are you going to be more of a stage 2 thing where you wait for mom to remind you? Now, parents, we call it reminding. Kids call it, nagging. You nailed it. Okay? So this is stage 3. Responsibility, ethics, morals, values. This is what's driving decisions on stage 3. This is the highest level of maturity over here, at least according to the model. Service, empathy. Okay, basically at stage 3, you're going to do the right things for the right reasons. So notice that it's about stage, not age. Now, let's go back to our question. How to raise successful kids without over-parenting. We got to understand the stages because that determines what we do as a parent. How much control do I need to take as a parent? Well, that depends on where my kids are. And this is how we avoid over-parenting. We have to correctly identify where our kids are on that model and then take the appropriate level of control. Let me give you just 3 quick C words that will help you to know what we do at each of those stages. At stage 1, we use consequences. And incidentally, they have to be consequences that do not require cooperation. That's a real key right there. Why? Because we don't get cooperation until stage 2. And we work in our coaching programs all the time to help identify what are those consequences. How can we come up with those? All right, that's part of the strategy for stage 1. It's not over-parenting. It's appropriately parenting a stage 1 child. You with me? Now, what about when we move to stage 2? The C word that I promised you is communication. Remember, this is where they're going to cooperate and communicate with you. You can have a chat with them. You can sit down with them and say, hey, this is an issue. What are we going to do about it? And they're like, I know, I'll try harder or whatever, okay? We got some communication going on. And then over here in stage 3, it's consultation. Consultation, this is where you get to sit on your throne on the hill. You're the sage up there on the mountain. They come to you and they ask you for your sagely advice. And you give it to them, and then they go home to their own 5 kids. Now, it can happen before, they got 5 kids of their own. But the point is, your position as a parent is one of a consultant. You're not telling them what to do. They're taking care of business at stage 3, and they use you as a resource. Now, I promised you 3 messages. I'm going to give those to you before I turn you loose. Make sure that you get that model. Seriously, this makes the biggest difference for parents of anything that I've seen in my professional career. Go grab it, drpauljenkins.com/stages. I'll put it right in your hands. Now, what are those 3 messages that we can send to our kids? I love you, no matter what and even if. This is your primary job as a parent. Everything else pales in comparison. Your job is to love them. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of discipline and I know some really effective ways to do it. But your job as a parent is to love them. In fact, if I share with you discipline ideas and you're not tuned into your job to love them, it's nothing more than manipulation. And it's probably going to backfire on you. You gotta come from a place of love. That's your whole motivation. And I know you feel it. I know you come by it naturally. Sometimes we get to practice bringing ourselves back to, that's my job. And that's the message I want you sending to your kids. I love you, no matter what and even if. Second message, I'm here for you. If you have any questions, ask. Okay, notice we're not going to cram it down their throat. We're not going to jump in and say, you have to, you must, you should. No, we're holding the resource, the information, the knowledge, and it is available to them for the asking. Okay, if you have any questions, ask. That's message number 2. And here's message number 3. This is a tough one for a lot of parents, but we're going to back off of the control. Remember, we're going to eventually give up all of the control to them, or they're going to take it, whether we want to give it to them or not. So we're going to take a position in this third message, good luck. See, this is our acknowledgement. Hey, I'm not controlling your life, you are. I vote you to be in control of your life. When I'm meeting with kids in my office or in a coaching scenario, I'm very clear about that. I vote you. I want you to be in control of your life. And if you're not mature enough to do that, I'm voting for your parents. If your parents aren't mature enough to do that, we got a problem. That's how you can raise successful kids without over-parenting. Hey, we've got you on this. You don't have to do this alone. Parenting is a challenging job, the most important job in the world. Grab the model. That'll get you started. drpauljenkins.com/stages. And then keep coming back. We got more for you right here.